Veering off the edge.
That would be brilliant. Be a great start, wouldn't it?
I just want to say thank you to Sarah for the Energizer session. You know, things like that most of the time, I'm not good at audience participation, so apologies. Okay, so this session up until lunchtime, we're just going to have a conversation with the Deputy General Secretary, Jane Peckham. For those of you who don't know, Jane started a career as a primary teacher, teaching for 16 years in Glasgow and South Lanarkshire. She left teaching in 1999, I believe.
Don't give away my age, Claire.
I'm sorry, Jane.
I'm
but,
35,
you know,
colleagues, let me tell you.
She gave up teaching probably 2.5 weeks ago and became General Secretary. She was General Secretary representative in Scotland and with a huge remit covering all aspects of education, and took up role as DGS in May 2021. And I've got to say that Jane absolutely believes in the importance of the collective voice, making sure that the views of members, members and the profession in general, I'd say, Jane, are heard loud and clear across all of our regions and nations. So thanks for agreeing to do this today.
Very welcome.
And we'll make a start because we don't have long. What I will say is we will try and come out for maybe 1 or 2 questions at the end, but you do have pieces of paper on your table if there are any comments that you feel that you want to make so that we can have a look at them later on. Okay?
I have to say, Claire, I'm a bit disappointed in the come and have a chat with Claire. Where's the cake?
No cake.
Everything, in my experience, is solved with cake. So let's see how we get on.
Is that what you're taking to the government then?
Absolutely.
Cake
Absolutely.
and some tablet, I think you will.
Oh yes, some in the room will know about tablet. 15s in Northern Ireland is equally impressive. So yeah, thanks for asking me to do this. So we'll crack on.
No worries, yeah. Okay, first question then that I'd like to put to you. What factors do you think prevent or discourage disabled teachers, including our members, from declaring their disability in the workplace?
Well, I think there's a number of factors that discourage disabled teachers and anyone with a disability in a workplace from declaring it. I think we're at a stage where we have lots of legislation, protections, guidance around disability, but there's a really mixed picture in how employers deal with it, in actually whether employers consider themselves to be responsible for it. And so there are huge issues that arise for all people with a disability, but particularly our members in the workplace. It's really hard, as it is with other forms of discrimination, to prove disability discrimination and to challenge it. It's a really difficult and complex area to take on. And so a lot of disabled teachers have to choose to not disclose their disability to prospective employers because they may not even be selected for an interview. And actually, when people say, well, I wonder what is the percentage of disabled workers in education, or the figures can never be accurate. They'll always be skewed because of the risks of revealing that you have that protected characteristic, subject to bullying and harassment in the workplace, and actually effectively being targeted for your condition. So we can never get an accurate picture of how many people are adversely affected in the workplace because they fear losing jobs, frankly, just for being honest.
We have a difficult enough time getting our members to complete the equality data forms that we hold. I don't know whether they're worried about us letting that information slip or whatever. I mean, obviously the people in this room, you have completed that, but I know and I'm assuming Jane as well, would like to encourage you to get your colleagues to complete that equality data form as well, because we need to know how we can best support our members, don't we, from all of our underrepresented groups, but especially from some of the information that we're going to discuss later on, from the questionnaire that we've done. It's massively important for our disabled members to do the same.
It is, and it's massively important for us as a union, Claire, because yes, we want to capture the data, and I can understand people's reticence because they maybe wonder, what are we doing with that data? Are we secure? Do we comply with GDPR, etc.? And I can absolutely assure you, colleagues, the only thing we use the data for is to try and improve our understanding and knowledge of the demographic of our membership, and to also be able to ensure that anyone with a particular characteristic, we almost, I use the word targeting in a different way here, we're able to target communications to say, we're having this event today, this is something you might be interested in. We have really secure systems in the union, but it is frustrating when, for example, an event like this comes up and we've got a database, if you like, or the information on who to send things to. But we know there are many, many hundreds of members out there that aren't receiving the communications. So one thing that people here can do is try and reassure your colleagues that we protect that information. I can recall, Claire, although I am only 35, a time when we didn't capture that information at all. And I've seen the rise and the improvement of all of our equalities work. And based on that information and that data, we can be doing so much more. If I'm going to meet with Bridget Phillipson on something, if I know we've got X thousand of people that are in this particular issue, it's more meaningful than saying, oh, some of our members have. And they always ask you that question.
Yeah, they do.
What do you mean by some? Is it 2? Is it 2,000? Is it whatever? So just providing that reassurance that we will always protect the information that we have there.
Yeah. And we also know as well, if we're doing that, especially around any kind of campaigns that we might have for our disabled members, that we have your support then, because we're focusing our questions to you, we're focusing our work on you as disabled members and getting your feedback in particular, which is really important. Just moving on then, the union's placing increased emphasis on strengthening workplace support provisions, for example, access to work for disabled teachers. I was just wondering if you wanted to explain a little bit to the delegates today why we're doing that.
Well, we're placing increased emphasis, but I mean, we have always had emphasis, but it's because things are not being solved, things are not being resolved. You know, we collect the data, we do the surveys, we understand the issues, we hear from members through casework, etc., that this needs to be addressed, but it's not being addressed. Yeah. And so as a union, as part of that collective, and frankly, you as the union, we have a responsibility to keep making that challenge, to keep trying to improve the working lives of our members. I mean, our members have a really bad time in schools, really bad time. In schools and colleges, I should say. Apologies to those in FE.
Our teaching workplaces.
And a lot of it is related to the lack of very positive employment, I was going to say strategies, law, decisions and practices, like flexible working, which is just not considered by many employers as something that's an option. Now, again, going back in my history, as you said, I was a primary teacher, and I had my first daughter a long time ago, and I came back to do job share, but there were no policies for job share. And the head teacher was very disparaging, and, you know, it doesn't work, you're only, you know, you won't be doing your job and all the rest. You have to fight for this all the time. We're now moving on nearly 40 years later, and there is still this perception that flexible working is to allow people to skive off, to not do their job seriously, and it's absolutely out of order. Many of our disabled members have to choose a path of flexible working, some because that's what they want to do, but many because they have to manage a particular condition or disability that doesn't allow them to work full-time in the workplace. So we cannot rest until we keep facing that challenge. I mean, we're in 2026. You know, the Equality Act came in 15, 16 years ago, all sorts of other things before that, and we're still not making enough progress. Having said that, we do have some really good employers who consider and understand their responsibilities in terms of the treatment of their disabled workers. They believe in genuine equality, and they have an understanding of their legal requirements to provide that safe and supportive environment. But there are school leaders in schools who feel that supporting disabled workers is an unnecessary burden, and most often continue unchallenged, creating a negative. I've written notes here, that's why, because I think it's a really important point. They create such a negative atmosphere that actually ultimately forces members out of the workplace. Well, I can't sit here as a trade unionist, and nor can you, and accept that. And I think my question out there is, why is this still being allowed to continue? It's a legal requirement. There are flexibilities within that, I get it. But for an employer to completely just ignore that responsibility, what's ever done about that? If it's not us challenging it. And I think that's something that we need to continue to press to make change there.
Absolutely, and I think when you see later the results of the survey which you completed, you'll see how important that is. But I think what is ironic is the fact that schools now, when we think of our neurodivergent pupils, for example, our neurodivergent students, we have to do everything that we can to make schools inclusive places for them, but the workforce is a second thought in many ways.
And reflecting back, as I say, 20 plus years ago, doing casework for members in terms of supporting them in reasonable adjustments and so on, and nothing seems to have changed. And it's even things that don't have, because we go down the whole funding debate, don't we? Things that don't have a cost attached, there seems to be just this, it's not a reticence, it's an opposition. No, we're not doing it. And we also know that it adversely affects our supply. Our supply teachers have a really poor deal. I have to say, specifically in England, specifically here in England, my accent will have given away that I don't come from England. I'm really impressed with the captioning, by the way. We had a conversation earlier.
Up with you, Jane.
My accent resulted in, well, similar accent to mine resulted in a colleague who was proposing a debate at conference who was talking about the word particular, and it came up as protecting Hitler. So I'm very pleased to say things have moved on. And I was speaking to Sammy, and I do understand that the couple who've worked to create this, I mean, I'm not reading it, but I'm pretty sure that it's coming up in proper English. So that's a real advancement. I'm always a bit nervous when I see these. But yeah, supply teachers, again, most of whom struggle already with the whole securing work. If you're a supply teacher with a disability, is somebody going to employ you for a 2-day contract when they need to make reasonable adjustments? They're just not. And in one sense, you can understand that in one way, but actually, why is that acceptable? And it leads to members with disability running into issues with poverty, and it's just a huge mess, and we need to continue to keep campaigning, because why should someone who has a disability not have the same experience at work as anyone else? And whether it's disability or any other protected characteristic, or, you know, we've constantly been fighting that, and I just need to see some progress.
It just feels to me like there's so many barriers there, and whilst workplaces are more open to removing them for pupils or for parents who need access to the school or whatever, there's kind of a reticence. It's almost as though they don't know what to do when it comes to the teachers, rather than they don't want to, but then they put their other barriers in place
I
as
think
well.
that's an excuse that they hide behind. Could you imagine if this was a pupil who needed adjustments made to ensure that they could take part fully in their education, and the school said, oh, no, actually, no.
Yeah, we're not going to bother with that
We're
one.
not going to bother with it. It's not important enough, or it's too much hassle. absolute uproar, and rightly so. But staff in the schools should be treated in the same way. And I think that disconnect's got to be addressed.
And I think there also might be a sense of feeling around their job security, your job security, when you see these challenges and schools not doing anything in order to be able to enable you to stay in the workplace for as long as you need to be to earn your living, to support your families. It just seems very strange to me that some members at that point, they don't want to rock the boat. You know, I'd be straight up there, right, we need a grievance, they need to be doing this, and this. But there's always that worry about if you or any other underrepresented group try to take some kind of action against your employer, that you're going to be even worse off than you were before you started.
And actually, there is law to protect that from happening.
Of course there is, yeah.
But again, I totally get it. I think you have to be able to be secure and the union's there to support that in making the challenge. But there would be a massive fear in doing that. And you know, again, what is being done. I do think there's another thing that we don't do enough of, and that is actually highlighting where there is good practice and where employers are good, or where an academy chain or a local authority has really good policy. And it's something that I know that our comms team through the union are very keen to promote. But in this time of recruitment and retention of teachers challenge, if you know that there are particular workplaces in your area that are supporting people with protected characteristics, you're far more likely to go to want to stay, work there and stay there. So there is something, I think, that we can be continuing to explore around that kind of thing.
And also where we as a union have had successes with employers around reasonable adjustments, around making workplaces accessible. We do want to hear about them, because we want to sing those successes from the rooftops, because I'm quite sure any employer, if they know that they're being spoken about highly with the teachers' union, then they would appreciate that kind of publicity as well. So maybe it's not all a one-way street.
Absolutely.
Okay, moving on then. In 2024, many disabled teachers were hopeful that a new government would lead to improved support and provision. But we're 18 months on. What are your expectations of how the union should engage?
A big sigh, sorry, I didn't mean that. Forgot I had a mic on. Well, yeah. I mean, I think we were all full of anticipation. You know, we've held events. I think this is my first disabled teachers event here. But we've held events for years, and it's always been about we need a change in government, we're campaigning, and absolutely, when that change in government came, we were full of promise.
Yeah.
We've got a new social partnership working arrangement. We have, access to those when they were in opposition that we had very regular discussions with, and so on and so forth. And I appreciate it differs across our nations. But I think your question really relates to Westminster government, which has an impact on everybody. And so we were full of hope. We were also being tolerant and thinking, well, they're not going to come in on this day and by next week the world will be solved and everything's fab, because they had a real mess to pick up. But we're now, what, is it 18 months nearly, or more than that? And I have to say I'm hugely disappointed. And I think there are other risks involved, which we'll come to in a minute. There were some very simple, quick wins for this government in terms of education, particularly. Yeah. And they've just not done it. No. We've worked on various, as I say, through the social partnership. I'm on the workforce group, which deals with terms and conditions and all the things that would arise here. There's one on SEND and there's one on accountability and inspection. I have to say the workforce group is the most productive and functioning. But again, what is coming out, and I know members and I know executive are sitting going, so we've been in the IET now for 18 months or whatever, what are we getting out of it? At the moment, very little. And I appreciate that it takes time to build, because we hadn't had social partnership for
long time.
well, I don't know,
years,
15 years or more. And we were quite instrumental through Patrick, who was one of only 2 people left as employees in the union who'd taken part in it previously, in setting up that social partnership. And also this time, well, it did include employers the last time, but more widening. So all of the teacher unions are involved, all of the employer groups are involved, and the government. But it's hugely frustrating. And we have some massive issues to look at, and the time ticks on and the time ticks on. So as a union, we need to be using our ability to challenge and to say, yes, we've signed up to social partnership, but actually, you're not listening. And just because we're in the room and we're all supposed to reach agreement does not stop us from saying, actually, no, we're not agreeing to that. And we may be in a partnership, but tough. And we'll go down whatever route we need to.
When you think about disability equality, in particular around your work groups and around engaging with government, how's that going?
Well, it's not going very well at all, because nothing's moving. As I said earlier, we've got the flexible working issue. Flexible working is not a difficult thing to implement. We know that people, when they're able to agree flexible working arrangements, actually increase their productivity. We keep making this point, government, because they fund the schools. And, you know, if they've got a position that they need to see being implemented, frankly, in our motions conference last year said this. If the school or whatever workplace is not towing the line, and it's mainly academies, pull the funding. We're the government is paying them money to do what they're supposed to do to deliver for the profession and for the workforce. And if they're not doing it, what's done about that? At the moment, nothing, apart from the trade unions raising it. The issues around disability pay gaps, there's lots of talk going on about pay gaps, whether it's gender, disability, race, whatever. The reporting of it is still shambolic, but it's improving. But what's being done to address it? And if they would make some of these sort of quicker wins, you know, flexible working for disabled teachers is frankly still mainly inaccessible. Why? Look at the issues, get it solved, get it ongoing. Because actually you would improve the service and the education to young people, because you have a more stable workforce who are happier in what they're doing, able to focus on the teaching and learning, and you know, improve for everybody.
So are they being like the employers who we were speaking about just a minute ago, where they're just putting barriers in instead of trying to remove those barriers? Or do they, again, just not have a clue where to start?
I don't think it's that they don't have I think it's a very big challenge. But you can't just say, like you, I think, referenced earlier, well, it's quite a big issue, so we just can't be doing it. And we as unions are bringing to them the evidence, you know, the where things are going well, what needs to be done, who is not doing it. They have the power to challenge that. They have the power to change it. And there's a lot of bills going through. There's the schools bill still not done, is it? Employment rights bill, which will benefit us, is at least sorted. So that's our role as a trade union. But we are going to have to, at some point, possibly take an industrial response to things, because that's not the way we work, as you know, particularly us. We try and resolve everything before it gets to that stage. But members need to be able to have their voices heard. And if they're not being heard, we need to challenge it. Having said that, we also need our members to understand, and I know many in the room do, that they are part of that. If we need to do an industrial challenge to something, we are extremely good at it.
Yeah, we are,
You know that. You're running disputes all the time. There is still a nervousness amongst members that it's putting your head above the parapet. But trust me, colleagues, it's not. And very often, it's resolved and sorted without there having to be this lengthy battle backwards and forwards.
But I
So
think again,
we
you've
need
got
to be
that
sort of,
quandary, haven't you,
yeah.
between the fact that our disabled members already feel potentially targeted, but if we ask them to take an industrial response, is that going to make it worse?
I agree, but I don't think it's just them that we should be asking. You know, we always refer to the union being a family. It's getting a bit, but I get that. But we all have a responsibility for that. So if there was to be an industrial response in a school or whatever, or in an area, it wouldn't just be those that are affected by it that we would be asked, because there are different ways to challenge as well. So, you know, that's something we need to reflect on, but it wouldn't ever be the first course of action. But I think we have to continue through our campaigning and lobbying to keep challenging this, because there are, you know, there are laws and legislation in place. They're there. They need to be used. I think what's really positive as well about having, I'm a bit going off on a tangent, but it is related, having that voice, because one of the routes is through our TUC mechanisms. And again, through the years, seeing the increase in NASUWT representation in all of our nation's disability committees, black workers committees, women's committees, and so on. It used to just be the TUC. And that is another way where members are able to stand up and say, this is an issue for us, and also join with members in other professions, in other unions, and have that collective approach. And we've got to protect that. Trade union membership of TUCs is dropping. And that's partly a cultural thing. It's partly, you know, pressure from some political parties and so on. But you will not achieve anything if we don't stay as a collective.
And I think that what you're saying there about the TUC almost links into the work we're doing around our equality champion work. About getting our members active, making, you know, our equality champion work isn't getting somebody in a workplace who's going to be hammering and banging on tables. It's about raising awareness of our equalities work and the work that we're doing and where people can join in and help. So if any of you in this room would be interested in taking on one of those sorts of roles, we've got a fantastic course that runs for that. But it's the sort of role where if you want to get into activism but don't want to raise your head above the parapet by being a workplace rep, it's a way that you can still help and get underrepresented members engaged and work with us to make a difference.
And I think that it's about dispelling that myth a bit. I don't like that phrase, but you know what I mean? Because it used to be, so how do we encourage people to become active? Well, you are all active because you're here today. But I can look around the room and see different levels of activism, people who are elected into roles and so on. Is there? I don't know how many people are here for the first time. That'd be interesting to know. But thank you. But it's about, so people will be sitting here today, Claire, and saying, I'm really interested in how I can have more of a voice. How can I do this? And again, it's that fear, well, I don't want to be a school rep, because what does a school rep actually do? And can I do that? Have I got the knowledge? I don't know the laws, etc., etc. Quite valid. What we're doing as a union is creating different pathways for activism so that everyone has an opportunity to take on, even in a very small way. It's interesting because it kind of snowballs. I can remember joining as a member, which in Scotland was really difficult, by the way, back in the 90s. And then I was sort of, oh, right, I quite like this. I went to a meeting, quite like this. And then my friend trained as a rep, so I thought, I'll be the health and safety rep, that's great. Then it's like, you get your arm bent up your back for more and more. But it's part of your own almost personal development as well. The amount of joy and education and experiences that I have benefited from just from being a member, and the contacts and the colleagues that you make, you know, it's worth it just for that.
Oh, absolutely.
But and I think that people need to understand that we're not going to say, I'm going to pick on Helen because I know Helen. Oh, Helen, brilliant. You want to do this. Here, here's a leaflet, right, off you go, you can represent people now. It's not like that. We take you through it.
Sure you want to do this?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I'm not sure it was me, Helen, but anyway. But I mean, you know, we have activists like that all the time, and I love to see that journey, and I love to almost be part of it. The main thing to do from here today is to go back and tell people you were here and what you've seen and what you've experienced, because I've looked at all the lists of all the, I mean, the stuff that's coming out today is just fantastic. And even if one other person, it resonates with them, then you've got an ally there.
And also as well, I think people forget about going back to your branch meetings. Go to your branch meetings. We're in AGM season, and tell people what it's like and share that experience, because getting your voices heard in your branches, in your regions, in your nations is probably the biggest thing you can do to help benefit the disabled members and the underrepresented members within the workplace. We've got about 5 minutes left. So I'm going to we'll start with one question and see where we get. Has anybody got a question?
About anything.
Well, it's specifically about this. Over the last few years, it has become very noticeable that members are reluctant to declare, in particular, their disability, but other protected characteristics. And they have a fear that that's going to result in them being discriminated against. And the general feeling is that our workplace reps and our caseworkers, brilliant though they are, would not be able to handle the level and quantity of potential things that came through. As Deputy General Secretary, you could change this. You could make a commitment that any member who requested it would have a regional official allocated to their case if they were discriminated against as a result of disclosing, in particular, their disability, but certainly any of the protected characteristics. Would you like to change our union in a positive way for the future for the benefit of our members?
Well, the answer to that is obviously yes. But I'm interested in how you phrased that, because that is open to members now. Anyone who has an issue in obtaining reasonable adjustments will be allocated somebody. Wouldn't necessarily be a regional official, because we have a lot of really well-trained active lay officials out there. We haven't got the capacity. I mean, frankly, we would not ever, no matter what size of union, and you think about Unison with millions of members, no one has the capacity and the funding to provide paid officials to undertake. But we do have a level of escalation, and we are currently working to get more people trained in how they can, even at the basic negotiations around reasonable adjustments, that doesn't necessarily have to be a regional official. If we've got more people out there who are, or equality champions or equality officers and so on, who start the process, at a certain point it does get referred to, especially if there's an issue around job loss, but equally teaming that up with, why is this employer not willing to make these changes? And there could be valid reasons depending on what the adjustment is, because every individual with a disability has their own individual needs and requirements. But we have to build it in around, so it's not just a casework response. There has to be an organising response resulting from that allows for us to challenge, and hopefully that won't then arise in that particular employer. If I had a magic wand, I'd absolutely have our offices filled with loads of new colleagues, you know, and we are looking at certainly targeting in terms of organising resource to support that. But it's really difficult. And if there is ever a member that isn't getting that support, we need to hear about it, because the support is there. I think sometimes, and you need to be careful of this, there is an expectation that a particular issue is immediately a legal case and we must take it through the High Court and all the rest of it. And that's about educating our members in what is the art of the possible, what are the requirements of the employer, and if we can't find that resolution informally through the normal routes of negotiation at school level or whatever, then we will escalate it and we will challenge it. So as Deputy General Secretary, that's my response. Absolutely, that should be available to every member. And frankly, if it isn't, I want to hear about it.
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, Jane, if it isn't, I want to hear about it.
You're the exec member, exactly.
Because I, as well as National Executive, as well as being chair of our Equal Opportunities Committee, I'm vice chair of our National Training Committee. And I was tutoring a discrimination course last week. I'm tutoring another one in a couple of weeks' time. And none of our caseworkers can undertake casework unless they have undertaken discrimination training. And it is a requirement that people keep that discrimination training updated. Otherwise, they can't be a caseworker. And if, actually the main gist of that training is if there is the remote sense of an alarm bell ringing around any type of discrimination, it is sent to the regional centre or the national centres for one of our paid members of staff to at least have a look at it, to check around any discriminatory elements. And if it is deemed to be discrimination, it stays with them. So I think what you're asking for is already in place. Yeah. And if you aren't experiencing that, or any of your members or colleagues aren't experiencing that, then you need to let us know, and we will deal with that.
And I think also we need to remember, and I think I touched on it in a different way earlier, that actually we're not the union, you are, and all that ethos of trade union collective responsibility and collective action starts at the workplace. Yeah. And we need to be training and empowering our people in their workplaces to get organised amongst themselves to start that sort of process. There will always be support offered. Yeah. But the issue at the moment is we don't have enough members who have the confidence and the training and the things like that to start that process. Yeah. So it kind of becomes a mountain before you've dealt with the original problem. And that's not just in our union, it's across the whole movement. Yeah. How many times have you heard a member say, what's the union going to do about this? Well, what are you doing? Yeah, is my answer back. It's not about not supporting, but it's about us as a collective addressing an issue, because it can't all be done by us, by executive, by school rep. Everyone has that responsibility. And frankly, it's quite good fun.
It is quite good fun. And it does what it says on the tin. We're a union, aren't we? We're meant to be united and working together to support each other. Thank you for that question. We do only have the time for the one question because I'm already slightly over, and that is not like me.
Or me. 3 o'clock, we'll be sitting here.
I think it was a really useful question, and I'm glad that we were able to talk about discrimination in general and what you should be expecting from the NASUWT, from the Teachers' Union. If there are any other comments that you would like to make around you as disabled teachers, around what the union is doing for you as disabled teachers, please do bob them on your notes or your pads on the table, and we'll collect them in later on. But Jane, I know you weren't particularly buzzed about
really
it,
enjoyed
but
it,
you enjoyed it. Good.
It wasn't sprung on me because I've seen that, and I thought, you know me, I normally wander about, waffle on, whatever. But actually, I've really enjoyed it, Claire. Good. So thank you for the opportunity. Thank you. And thanks all for listening. And I hope the rest of the day goes really well, because this is a brilliant conference.
Thank you, Jane.
And is it lunch now?
It is lunch now. So lunch now until 1:45. So we'll see you all back here then. Go eat and have a nice break.
Yeah.